Hello learners, myself Dr. Taruna Malhotra. Today the topic of discussion is learning, its characteristics and factors. The capacity to learn is a gift, the ability to learn is a skill, the willingness to learn is a choice. So beautifully said. The main objective of any school as an institution is to bring desirable changes in the behavior of children through the process of learning. All living creatures learn. When the child is born, he is like a clean slate. As soon as he comes in the contact of environment, he starts reacting and responding, and in this process of interaction, the foundation of learning is laid down. The term learning is basically derived from a German word lernen, which reflects to learn, to ponder, to cognize or to read. Learning is basic to our understanding of behavior. It is the part of nearly every aspect of our life. As an infant, you learned to hold yourself upright, to walk and to use your hands. Later, you learned to run, ride a bicycle and to operate many electronic gadgets. You learned to read, write and study for exams. Eventually, you learned how to get people to give you what you want by asking, negotiating, being nice or showing resentment. You have also learned how to learn. Learning can be understood in three broad ways. Basically, first one is learning is relatively permanent modification of behavior. Learning is the process of being modified more or less permanently by what happens in the world around us, by what we do or by what we observe. Whatever is in our behavior, that is the learning. Second one is acquisition of habits, knowledge and attitude necessary to meet the demands of life. Learning is a process by which the individual acquires various habits, knowledge and attitude that are necessary to meet the demands of the life in journal. Third one is the relatively permanent change in personality. It includes cognitive part of behavior, affective, attitudinal, motivational, behavioral and other possible dimensions of our behavior. So it can be said that learning is acquisition of habits, knowledge and attitude by modification of behavior through experience and training. It involves new ways of doing things by representing progressive changes in behavior. Now we will discuss about characteristics of learning. First one is learning is continuous process. There occurs changes in the thinking, attitude, interest, etc. continuously to fit to the ever-changing condition from childhood. Every human being tries to change his or her behavior in the life. Learning is goal directed. If there is no goal to achieve, then there would be no necessity of learning. Means learning is always goal directed. Third is learning is intentional. We deliberately do some activity to attain the goal. As I have told you earlier, learning is always goal directed. Learning is transferable. The things learnt in a situation can be applied in another similar situation to solve problems or to get answers. Learning is always purposeful. We do not learn anything and everything that comes in our way in haphazard manner. Rather, we always choose what we want to learn. Learning is outcome of the interaction. As a teacher, one has to organize the environment carefully to motivate the students so as to interact with the environment. Learning is individualistic. The pace of learning from person to person because of individual differences. Learning is also a social process. As a child lives in a society and gets influenced by the ideas of his parents, friends, classmates, peers, siblings, etc. and tends to acquire their feelings or notions in his behavior. Learning is product of environment. Except heredity, whatever we have, that is the effect of environment. So environment should be healthy and rich in educative possibilities. Then learning can be said as adjustment. Learning helps or learning tells the students to adjust himself with new or challenging situations. Now we would talk about factors affecting learning. First one is learning and maturation. Maturation stands for biological growth and development. Maturation occurs in sequence. It prepares the child to acquire new skills and progress on it. Maturation is a process whereby behavior is modified as a result of growth and development of physical structure. This definition was given by Gray and Kingsley. So, maturation can be said a developmental process that may be ascribed to heredity or constitutes specific species-specific behavior. It is a natural process. Maturation is growth which takes place in the individual. The changes on account of maturation are the results of unfolding and ripening of inherited traits. They are relatively independent of activity, experience and practice. Second is readiness to learn. There are different kinds of readiness. First one is physical maturation, means the student or learner should be physically mature enough to learn something new. Like one cannot join a race if he or she is not capable of walking. Second is development of intellectual skills and the acquisition of background information. It means that the student have basic knowledge of all the aspects to go ahead, like one cannot multiply if one does not know addition of numbers. Mental readiness is also of crucial importance. Mental alertness is also of crucial importance. Third is the learning environment. Now, what's a learning environment is told by Gravels in 2007. He said, a suitable learning environment is crucial to enable your learners to learn effectively. This involves not only the venue and resources used, but your attitude and the support you give to your students. Learning environment is a combination of social and physical qualities that creates the classroom experience, and a conducive environment is one that allows maximum interaction between teacher and students and among students, and providing a good physical environment also. Fourth is learning and motivation. Motivation is basically the force generated in the individual which sustains and controls the activities of the pupil till the goal is achieved. Motivation can be divided in two parts: intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is driven by an interest or enjoyment in the task itself and exists within the individual rather than relying on any external pressure, whereas extrinsic motivation is performance of an activity in order to attain an outcome and comes from outside of the individual. Extrinsic rewards are tangible rewards like pay, benefits, working conditions, the material aspects of the work. Extrinsic motivation, we engage in certain behaviors to receive or avoid rewards or punishments. We are motivated to perform a task to receive rewards. Whereas in intrinsic motivation, intrinsic rewards or intangible rewards are required: feeling of achievement, challenge of work itself, recognition relate to the nature of work itself. Under intrinsic motivation, individual desires to work hard for the pleasure of accomplishment or achievement. You can see intrinsic motivation includes self-fulfillment, love for the culture, pleasure, love for the language, whereas extrinsic motivation is influenced by teacher, parents, salary, job, grades, requirements, etc. Then next is learning and reinforcement. Reinforcement depicts using events, actions and behaviors to increase likelihood of a certain response recurring. It may be positive, it may be negative. Positive reinforcement. The word positive in positive reinforcement does not refer to the pleasantness of the stimulus. It means a stimulus is added or applied to the situation. Any stimulus that works to increase the frequency of a behavior it follows is a positive reinforcer, even if it doesn't seem like it should be rewarding. The example of positive reinforcement is a high school student helping around the house gets to borrow the family car, or a waiter receiving high tips for his pleasant service. Next is negative reinforcement. It occurs when a behavior is reinforced by removal of a stimulus. The word negative does not mean unpleasant. It means a stimulus is removed or subtracted from the situation in order to reinforce a behavior. Students who turn their work on time get one homework assignment eliminated for every 10 that are on time. A teacher shortens their driving times to work by waking up an hour earlier and missing heavy traffic. Now we can see the difference between positive and negative. Reinforcement is used to increase a behavior. Under positive reinforcement, we add something like candy, stickers, treats, certificate, lunch, etc. Whereas in negative reinforcement, we remove something like no homework or exemption from test. Role of teacher to facilitate meaning-making learning. For this, the teacher should have clear knowledge. The teacher should have clear knowledge of the previous experience of each student relating to the activity before initiating any learning activity. The teacher should have the intimate knowledge of the interest, attitudes and typical personality characteristics of the students which have bearing on their perception. Third is, the teacher should create a congenial environment, fear-free environment in the classroom and school in which the student would feel free to express their viewpoints on the issues being discussed. Then next is constructing opportunity. The teacher should avail opportunities for each student to explain his or her viewpoints so that in the process everyone could understand the perception of other. Now let's have a video on the role of teacher. Now I will tell you about how the teachers can be helpful in learning. First point is, all students learn differently. It means that every child has his or her own pace of learning. Some child learn by memorizing or through rote learning, whereas some may learn by auditory or visual experiences. reinforcer. The teacher should be a good reinforcer. Let's take an example in geography. If a teacher is instructing a class of kids about the states and capitals in the India, it should be reinforced in 3 different ways. For the visual learners, use maps and worksheets. For the auditory learners, create a song that helps them to remember what state and capital together. For kinesthetic learners, activate the body. Third one is consider kinesthetic learners. Of all 3 types of learner, the kinesthetic learners are the hardest bunch to teach in a traditional setting. Oftentimes, they need to touch, taste and move through knowledge in order to absorb it. This requires space and opportunity that many traditional classrooms do not allow for. Fourth is, there are 7 learning styles. First one is visual, when we use sight or use our perception. Second is auditory, here using songs or rhymes or poems. Third is verbal, speaking out loud for the information. Kinesthetic, using touch and taste to explore the information. Next is logical, a more mathematical approach to concepts. Next is interpersonal, learning in groups where students learn to share, to cooperate and learn in collaborative manner. Next is intrapersonal, learning alone, when you learn with your own self. Next principle is make it relevant. Information is only stored permanently when it relates to day-to-day living. For example, math concepts must be reinforced in real life examples or the student will have no reason to absorb the information beyond the exam. Whereas, history is one of the more difficult subjects to bring into the present, since it mainly deals with past events, dates and people. Finding strategies rooted in educational psychology to bring it to life will help with learning. Next is, failure is a fabulous teacher. A teacher should never scold his student on his or her failure because people learn from failure. In fact, ask any major successful person what helped them and usually it will involve a story that harkens back to a big mess up. Failure teaches even better than a perfect score on a test. It doesn't mean that we should encourage the student to get fail, but if the student gets low score because of some reason, we shouldn't scold him, rather we should help him to come out from that setback. Seventh is integrate the curriculum. Rather than keeping each subject separate, curriculums that use thematic units work well to blend knowledge together in a way that is useful and memorable. Next is create space. This is a psychological and linguistical suggestion. Creativity is the birthplace of true learning, where a student can initiate thoughts, ideas, problems and make connections between concepts. So, a teacher should create space to encourage to student to think diligently. Brief and organized bites. When a person wants to memorize a phone number, they divide the digits into easy to remember patterns. This is because the brain struggles to hold on to a long list of numbers but can do so when they are organized meaningfully. The same principle applies to lectures. Psychology tells us a 30-minute lecture that is not structured with categories or organized into easy to recall bullets will not be as effective. Use technology. Never before in human history has there been such unparalleled access to knowledge and information. With the tap of a tablet or smartphone, a student can get instant answers to questions that used to mean a trip to the library's dusty encyclopedia section. It means the teacher must be techno-savvy so that the teacher may encourage the student to use technology in a proper manner. And in the last, I would like to thank all my students for patient hearing.